Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 1X Developer Podcast. I am Colin,
I am Brendan.
and we are speaking like robots today. Okay, I did not select a whose side are you on topic before I clicked record just now. So let's just go with this. How do we feel about Electron apps?
Here's the thing. I know for a fact that I use some Electron apps that I didn't find out till later were Electron apps, and like Obsidian, I think, is an Electron app.
Yeah, the native app, I think, is, well, native. But yeah, the desktop app.
I have no performance issues. I have no issues, all the things people complain about with Electron apps, about it eating up all the RAM and all that. Like, I don't have any of that. I never have any complaints with that. I have a general feeling, though, that I think that Electron app is closely associated with low effort, low quality kind of stuff. And so I have a general dislike of Electron apps. But I think the thing for me is just if I can't tell it's an Electron app, then I don't care.
Yeah, so well, I guess we should give a little bit of background. So Electron is a framework for making desktop applications in JavaScript. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, just using web technologies. Yeah.
Yeah, I might not have used all the technically correct words there, but yeah, it's like you're using JavaScript to make desktop apps, and some people feel very strongly that this is terrible, mostly for performance reasons. I pretty much agree with you, Brendan. It is kind of wrong. And I'm sure that the performance probably or absolutely is not as good as if everything was written in C++ or whatever. But generally, at least on my hardware, I don't seem to have problems. I don't have a vehemently I don't get incredibly angry whenever I use an Electron app.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm a little bit on the middle ground, but I do think it's weird. I think it is a little odd that we're making native desktop apps in JavaScript instead of just JavaScript just being used on the web.
Well, here's the thing: is my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically an entire web browser that can only go to one website, right?
Right. Yeah, so it's like a web browser.
Every Electron app that you download is the entire the JavaScript engine to run it and all of that stuff that goes along with it. Everything that you need to display a web page, CSS interpreter, all that stuff, all of that is included in the Electron app for every app. And so right. In that sense, it's incredibly wasteful. I don't think there's any Electron app that couldn't be smaller and leaner and meaner and faster if it were written with native technologies and not used web technologies inside of a browser wrapper. But at the same time, I think that a lot of developers, they've already developed a web app, and so they want to just make a native desktop app using essentially that same code base. So they just wrap their website inside of a Electron app.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of web first tools tend to have an Electron app. Like Discord is an Electron app because it also it has a web page you can just go to in your browser, which makes sense. And so there is it does kind of break down a barrier of entry and make things more accessible for developers, which is a pretty good segue, I think, into our topic of today.
Yeah. So, yeah, this topic is a little bit, I feel like it's going to be a little rambly. It's kind of all over the place, but something we've been talking about. I don't know, I'm not even sure where to start with this, but I'll start with this timely commentary on this 2008 article from Jeff Atwood titled "No Matter What They Tell You, It's a People Problem." And his premise in the article is basically he says, I can determine with almost utter certainty whether your project will fail with these three questions. How many lines of code will your team write? So like how big and complex is the project? What kind of software are you building? What industry or segment, whatever this is in? And three, do you like your coworkers? And that's kind of what the article focuses on. And it's like, basically he's saying that by far the biggest thing that informs whether a software project is going to succeed or fail is the people working on it and how well they interact. How do they solve problems? How do they organize themselves? Do you respect your coworkers? Do you one of the things he says is like, if you went to a new job, would you take your coworkers with you? Do they challenge you? That kind of stuff. He's saying that stuff is far more important than like any of the technologies or anything like that we choose. And software developers love to sit around and debate the minutia of like the technology stack that we're going to use for any given project.
Yeah. Imagine if there was like a podcast where like two guys talked about the technology that they use and they almost never talked about like the soft skills project management stuff. I guess that's not true. We do talk about project management stuff here and there.
Yeah, we
that's
do.
Fun stuff, but right. The fun stuff is talking about how we feel about Electron apps.
Yeah, I mean, us and everybody else, though. I think it's I think there's something in the engineering mindset that is just loves to. Maybe that's what they would fall under, like bike shedding, right? What color are we painting the bike shed,
right?
Rather than the important stuff. But like, yeah, there is something that's just fun about like debating merits of technology.
Yeah, so I think like from my perspective, broadly, I pretty much agree with everything in the article here, right? I mean, I'd say that goes for most projects, even. There's obviously there's technical decisions you can make that can break you, but for the most part, I would say that's not the important part. Like I mean, at least one example I can think of off the top of my head is Minecraft famously was written in Java and allegedly had just like a horrible code base, the original version of Java, or the original version of Minecraft, that is. And so I would say, that's a case of like kind of choosing the wrong tool for the job, but it's still working out. And then, there's tons of cases of people using the right tool for the job and then it not really succeeding. That happens all the time. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, that's generally true, right?
I think so. What I guess my feeling is that they both influence the outcome of the project. I would say the split is maybe like 70-30, 70% people, 30% right, 30% being the right fit of the technology for the problem that we're trying to solve, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even like want to say numbers, like, because it's ethereal. Like it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where the line is. I mean, it's I would say, like I was just saying, like it probably is more people than technology usually, but I don't know where. I don't know how much more.
So what can we do? Like, why is that? What's happening there that, like, I don't know, because one of the things that I think is interesting to discuss about that is like people who don't like each other work successfully together all the time, right? Like,
right, yeah.
Pink Floyd were barely talking to each other and record a great album, right? That stuff happens. And like, I think there's something in the modern way that we think about work, especially like knowledge work, office work, whatever you want to call it, that we kind of think this idea of like getting along with your coworkers is kind of just superfluous. People are just like, I don't know, you just get thrown into a job and like you hope for the best. You you hope your coworkers are people that you like, but there's never any, like, I've never been on a job interview. That's not true. But like in general, you don't spend a lot of time with the people in your department on a job
Yeah.
interview and stuff like that. And yet that's, I mean, that has the most influence of anything on how your day-to-day life is going to be at the job. Um, I just think that's really interesting that, like, I think probably most people would agree people working successfully together it's going to come out a lot better if the people respect each other and like each other and all that. And yet we don't place any emphasis on that when we're like hiring for jobs or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a number of jobs where in the interview process, like it was like a company wide kind of hiring process. And so like as I was interviewing, I didn't even know what team I would be on, right?
Mm.
It was like after they hired me, they like found a team for me. So it's like I didn't even have the option of saying like, "Hey, can I meet who I'll work with?" So yeah, that it's yeah, it's completely overlooked. But I will say, like, so he mentions in his article, uh, the people liking each other. I view it more as like just kind of the broad, like just saying soft skills versus like hard skills kind of thing. Because, like you were saying, there's a lot of examples of people being difficult or not liking each other. Uh, Steve Jobs, people say was like kind of a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Linus Torvalds, I think some like there's a little bit of like a mythos around him, but he obviously like has not always been nice to everybody. There's definitely cases of people that are like not easy to get along with that are highly effective. So I don't know if how much they like each other is necessarily it, or if it's some other thing. Like I think of it more broadly as just like um, are you focused? Like, is everybody on the same page with what the vision is? That kind of stuff.
Right.
Um, the kind of project management type things, right? I think those things are what's super important. Um, which is funny because like those are all the things that like I hate talking about at work. Like I don't really like doing retros and talking about like sprint planning and stuff, but that probably is where most of the real like magic is happening, if I'm being honest.
I think one of the interesting things is that whatever your process looks like for project management, I think it really is that thing that you just said about everyone being on the same page. That's like that's what makes that stuff kind of bearable, right? If if you show up to work and you like don't really care about what you're doing and you don't you don't really like the people you're working with and all that, like there's no project management system that's going to make of that any part of that job feel good. It's only when you have that kind of shared vision of like where we're going with all this, then you kind of put up with the stupid the daily scrums and all that like it's like, okay, I don't like doing this, but like I feel like we're working on something together. We're headed in the right direction together. That's what kind of I think makes that stuff bearable and feel like it's actually productive and not just a waste of time.
Yeah, Matt Watson talks about a lot of this stuff in his book that I read. He mentions like clarity of the vision, uh, the focus, like just kind of everybody being in sync. I feel like he would agree that like building the right thing with maybe the wrong tools is probably better than building the wrong thing with the right tools.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things he mentions in this article too is that let me see if I can find this. Where does he say? Um, Sorry, I'm looking for a specific. If you aren't working with people you like, people you respect, people that challenge and inspire you, I think that's a really good. Like he kind of just drops that in at the very end and doesn't really dwell on it, but I almost think that's a bigger point than like, do you like your coworkers? Do they do they challenge you? People can be kind of unlikable and hard to work with in a certain way, but if they're like, but they can still push you to do better stuff. They can still challenge and inspire you if you respect them, if you understand like where that kind of I don't know, maybe they come off as being a jerk, but they're doing it so that you're like learning and you're
Right.
making better stuff as a result of it. I think that's a really important one.
Yeah, maybe that's what your team needs.
Yeah.
That kind of makes me think too, like there is a little bit of like a symbiotic relationship between the tech and the soft skills sometimes, right? Like a lot of the times the right programming language to choose is the one that your team knows, right?
Mm.
Maybe it's not solely like the technical aspects of the language, but the thing that your team is familiar with is there's value there. And I think there is a little bit more. These two things are a little bit more linked than maybe you might think at first, right? If you have a team that's very diligent about testing and very experienced and just like very focused on like memory management, then Rust might not have as much value for your team as it would for like a team that is relies on like what Rust does for them more.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's just occurring to me now.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, we were talking a little before this episode about Rust and how the compiler can be seen as kind of like either a pain in the ass or like a feature that maybe pushes you to do better. That's an interesting kind of idea that like it depends on the skills that people are bringing to the table as to what technology is going to work best. Yeah, maybe if everyone's familiar with like a low level kind of thing, maybe that's less important. Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe the other way though too. Maybe the Rust compiler is just less of a big deal. You spend less time fighting it because you kind of like already understand the low level stuff. I don't know.
Somewhat related, did you see that the Ladybird team recently switched to Rust?
Oh, I did. Didn't he say something about he rewrote the whole code base in 2 weeks with AI or something?
Yeah, that's we talked about that the other day. But the reason why I bring it up is they previously were very vocal about they wanted to use Swift, and they were kind of like anti-Rust. It sounded a little bit before, but then they announced in February that they are going to move to Rust. I'm looking at the announcement. It sounds like it's mostly about C++ interoperability. That was an issue with Swift, and working outside of the Apple ecosystem was challenging with Swift. I just find it interesting though, like you do have this thing a lot of the time whenever you're starting a project where you have this like decision paralysis kind of thing, or at least I do. Like even for side projects, right? I'll do this thing where I'm like, okay, do I want to use this because it'll be really fun to use, or do I want to use this because I really need to learn this and everyone's talking about it, or do I want to use this because it sounds like I'll actually get the project done with it, or do I want to do this because it's actually probably what this project should be made in? And there's definitely this like just get started factor that I've kind of adopted, right? Like I recommend it to people. Like having something is better than having like a prototype in 20 different things, right? Like you want to like try to get something done, unless it is totally just an exploratory project, and that's part of my problem, right? Because I'm kind of doing that, but then kind of want to make something and I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wonder if the Ladybird team is having that, right. Like I mean, according to them, it sounds like they ported to Rust pretty easily. But I don't know. It's another thing to think about, I guess. Like sometimes you just need to pick a thing and start working, you know?
Yeah. Yes. 100%. I agree with you. I think that the difference when you're talking about your personal projects is, yeah, there's no deadline for that. There's no like no one's gonna
Yeah.
call you out on it if you don't turn something in. So it I think it can be really hard. It just takes a lot of discipline to like set those limits for yourself when you don't have a boss being like, where's this thing I asked you to do?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. Related to that, I kind of want to. I've kind of been thinking about this idea of like, um, I saw. I think it was a tweet I saw a while ago where somebody was saying that basically that every language is the same, but it's just different syntax. Uh, and it stuck with me because I just think that's like so wrong. Like that's so not what it is. Um, so I guess I kind of want to like take a second. Like, I mean, we're saying that the project management, the leadership, the team, that's more important than your technical decisions. But the technical decisions do matter, right? There's still that 30% maybe that where it does matter, right?
Yeah.
And I think I get the feeling, and maybe it's partially like the vibe coding thing is part of this, but I get the feeling that a lot of people are thinking that they don't matter at all, right? But they do. I mean, the obvious one to me is performance, right? That's kind of like what we were talking about with the Electron app, right? Your Electron app is just never going to perform like the way a native like C++ app is going to perform, right? It's like it's just not feasible.
Yeah.
And that's just like a built-in thing. That's not like a skill issue. It's not like a how you wrote it kind of thing. That's like fundamental to like how the thing works, right? And I don't know. I get the feeling that a lot of people are overlooking things like that. Like, no, if you're doing systems programming, you kind of need to use a systems programming language. In general, like we're both Python developers. We've talked about this on the podcast before, and Python is notoriously slow. And we've talked about how for us in like web dev and stuff, it doesn't really matter, right? Like the benefits we get from having this like ergonomic language that's really nice and friendly to work with and has a big ecosystem, you know, is works for us, you know, and is worth maybe the cost of performance.
Yeah.
But there, you know, all this just to say that there are times when like there's technical considerations that are very real. And, you know, I could give other examples besides performance. I mean, I've been interested in Elixir for a while, and, you know, it's built on the Beam framework, which is all about fault tolerance. So, you know, if you're working on a specific project where you know things are going to fail and you want to be able to fail gracefully and keep everything running and have all these different sessions, Elixir is a great choice for that. And there's other things where you might struggle more with that. You know, there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah. What's the language that the original language for Beam? So I'm drawing a blank on
There's Erlang.
Erlang, yeah.
Yeah, which Elixir is kind of like just like a friendlier Erlang is kind of my understanding.
So let me ask you this: other than like performance, I think one of the really interesting ideas is like when a specific programming language or framework or something lets you like express ideas that are more that are like closer to the problem space that you're trying to get to. And I wish I had some good examples off the top of my head, but do you know what I mean by that? It's like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, and some of it, well, okay, because there's kind of like language and then there's like ecosystem, right? Like a lot of people say if you want to do AI stuff, you should really be writing Python because Python has all the libraries for that, which is like it's real, but it's also like not a real limitation. Like there's no reason you couldn't build those tools in another language, right?
Right.
But then there's more what you're talking about, and I also can't really think of a good one. But I mean, okay, so we had the episode where we talked about APL to give like the most unrelatable example possible.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about APL, and like APL is really made for array programming, right? Manipulating arrays, and it seems to maybe struggle a little bit with things that aren't that, right? So yeah, that's a language that's kind of like for this domain, and that's not like a library thing. That's more of like fundamentally how the thing was created.
Yeah. Right. No, that's a great example. And talking about ecosystem there, Adam was talking about how like APL in a lot of cases didn't even have libraries really, because people wrote
Right.
like its functions were so short that people would just like copy and paste them, inlining them basically. And like, yeah, so that's a consideration too. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be ideas that are easiest to express in APL far easier than they would be in Python or in any other language. And I think that functional programming probably has something similar, where there are just certain kinds of ideas that just are easier to express, more natural to express in those kind of languages,
Yeah, and I've heard people argue the opposite also. Like, oh man, I can't remember who it was or what exactly he was trying to say, but basically, the way your processor works, right? It executes, step by step, right? Like that's just like how your computer works architecturally. And so he was kind of saying that he's kind of against functional programming just kind of as a paradigm because it's abstracting that out, right? Like, the whole thing about like when you're writing Haskell is you're not thinking about it iteratively, right? You're thinking about it recursively, like, oh, this function calls this function, whatever it needs to, and it just kind of does it like when it needs to, right? Lazy loading, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But your CPU isn't doing that, right? Your CPU is thinking procedurally. So his argument was basically just that like a programming language that is executed procedurally is less abstracted and kind of closer to how your computer actually works. Yeah, which is kind of weird, but like I think there are times where doing something functionally might be well. Okay, so the example that I always think about is like object oriented programming is really big in game dev, and I think it like I know object oriented programming is like kind of like it's like not cool anymore, but I think it fits game dev really well, right? Because the way games generally work, you have like an enemy, you have different kinds of enemies that are some are stronger, some are faster, but they're all like they function the same way. They can take damage from the player. They try to hit the player.
Yeah.
So like it makes a lot of sense to kind of instantiate objects of this class, right? That makes a lot of sense for game dev specifically. And I've kind of explored a little bit of functional programming for game dev, and it's been done. People have made games in Haskell and stuff, but I kind of wonder if like it seems to me, and I haven't done a lot of like I don't know Haskell, whatever, and I haven't even really done a whole lot of game dev either. But it feels to me like you would be kind of like fighting against the functional paradigms in a way in order to make a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your game is like that traditional type of you've got different types of enemies, uh, you know, like in Unity they refer to them as game objects, right? Like it seems like it's a natural fit, and this is kind of the weird thing about it, right? Like that's a case where it's more this language feels better than the other. It's not like a hard limit, right? Like I said, people have made games in Haskell, but I would say that like if that's a technical decision you're trying to make, like yeah, I think game dev kind of makes sense in like C# and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean I think that's why I don't know. I think that's why I don't like that argument about functional programming um, being less, being kind of like more abstracted from the way a CPU works, is because like I think that by doing that abstraction, we might be able to create a language that is able to express certain ideas and stuff in a different way, right? Um, in a way that makes it more natural than the iterative process that the CPU is actually going through. Like
Yeah.
now we can think about things in a different way and express them in a kind of a different way that is more natural to the way that we're thinking about those things. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And that guy, he, for context, I don't remember his name, but he's like a low level programming guy. So
Mm.
that's kind of where he was coming from. Is I think he was saying like, if you're trying to eke out performance, like, and yeah, functional programming doesn't really exist. I mean, I know Rust has like a little, you can kind of do functional programming in Rust, but like, yeah, like systems languages don't really work like that usually, you know?
Right. Yeah. But like with object oriented programming, that's not how your CPU is really thinking about things either. I mean,
Right.
that's a
Yeah,
complete abstraction on top of the CPU.
that's true. Yeah. And then you've got like, other like kind of weirder things like just like portability, you have some languages that can kind of run on anything, and then languages that aren't supported on a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah. And those are, yeah, I mean, those are decisions that you need to make from the outset is the tricky part, like what platforms you're going to support, because that is a hard one to go back on.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're like, we're just doing Intel CPUs and like
Yeah.
that's all we're making software for, that's a tough decision. I mean, that's why C exists and all this stuff, is to kind of give us that flexibility for multiple platforms.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the big selling points of things like Electron or just JavaScript in general is like if you make something in JavaScript, you can find pretty much anything has a browser, right? Like so moving it to mobile and desktop and whatever else is like gonna be pretty easy.
Right. Yep.
So I wonder, okay, so we're talking about like some technical considerations. What are some of the like soft skill type things that you need to consider other than just like how much you like each other? Like, do you think there's like certain project management techniques or like certain team dynamics that just do work better than others or don't work?
I do think that there are. Um, no, I really think the biggest thing is what you were saying earlier about like rowing in the same direction. I think it's really important to have. I think it's really. Let me say this. It's bad when there's like a lot of competitiveness and people feel like it's important for them to like get credit for things. I think
Yeah.
that that's a really, really bad dynamic. I think that when there's a real sense that the team is doing something and the team needs to succeed, and like it really needs to be on the manager of the team to like keep track that if someone is really slacking and like not pulling their weight, the manager needs to call that out. But I think in general, the members of the team should just have this attitude of like, we are doing this collectively, and it doesn't really matter. Like if someone needs me to pick up the slack, that's fine, because this is a team effort. I think it's a really, when the incentives are such that people are obsessed with like individual credit and like making sure that the boss sees what I'm doing and that kind of stuff, I think that makes for a really, really bad work environment.
Yeah, that's big. Related to that, I notice like teams that are I guess siloed is the word, but what I really mean is like when you have like a front end engineer that won't touch anything other than what's strictly defined as front end, and like a back end engineer that just won't touch anything that isn't defined, specifically defined as a back end task.
Mm-hmm.
Because like there's always things that are kind of like include like multiple different people, right? And that sucks when like people won't like kind of cross the aisle a little bit, like there are some things that are kind of developer and kind of DevOps, right? There are things that are like kind of the database and the back end engineer, like there needs to be people that can like kind of float between those things.
Definitely. What do you think is the solution to that? Should everyone know a little bit about everything, or maybe teams should be constructed so that there's like a front end and a back end and a DevOps person within every team so that you can kind of like, I don't know, coordinate more quickly?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have a good answer for that. But I would say it's more of just an attitude thing, really. I don't think it's really like a like technical know-how thing. The thing I've encountered is when people are just like, "Oh, that's this task. I'm not going to touch that." Right? It's like, hey, think kind of what you were saying. Like, think of it as we're all on the same team. Like, we're all pushing for this same goal. Like, you should be kind of willing to do whatever is needed to like fulfill that goal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more of like a cultural kind of like interpersonal thing, I think.
What do you think about development and QA? Should those be getting a little off topic here, but on the same thing, like, do you think developer, I guess what I'm saying is like, I think there are maybe some good arguments in favor of those roles being separate and a developer not doing their own QA. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you have a big enough team, maybe it's important that the developer not step in and be like, I wrote this code and I'm also doing the final check on this code,
No, I'm glad you bring that up because this is actually something I think about a lot. Like when the developer, when there's like a separate QA person or department, there tends to be this kind of like adversarial kind of relationship, sort of, right? Because it's like the developers are trying to push things out and the QA team is like playing defense, right? Like trying to keep things from getting put out, basically, right? And it can be very frustrating for both, right? Like when QA like won't let you put something out there and you like, it just seems like they're just nitpicking everything. It feels very negative, right? So I think that like, I think development in QA is a relationship that like needs to be fostered. And I think like I think good QA engineers have a specific personality type that can like prevent that. I do also think they should be separate people. Just like checking your own work just isn't right. I mean, the main problem usually, right? Your code is usually right. It's just like you wrote the wrong thing, if that makes sense, right? Like your code is right except for like when it's wrong. You know what I mean? What I mean is like your code doesn't have, or at least a lot of the time for me, like it's not that my code has like direct bugs, right? Like it compiles, right? Or like it doesn't have like type errors or anything like that. It's just like I didn't understand the problem, right? I made some assumption about my data or something like that. Well, that's still a bug. But you know what I mean? Like I kind of just built the wrong thing. I built it correctly, but like I built the wrong thing. And so if you're doing QA on that, you always need somebody else to look at it, right? And look at it holistically, right? Because I don't think, I've noticed also that I think a lot of like code reviews aren't enough, right? Like a code review, what I'm describing would pass code review, but it won't pass QA. Because when QA looks at it and says, okay, what's the user experience? What's the whole, what's the whole implication of this? They'll catch that stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Well, that's kind of interesting though, because I feel like code reviews would catch some of those. Don't you think? Like, well, maybe it kind of depends on whether the person doing the code review kind of has that holistic view, that mountaintop view of the project, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I tend to think of a code. I come to like I come into a code review thinking more about the code, right? Not necessarily like the end user experience, which maybe is wrong. That's probably wrong on my part, but I think a lot of people have that tendency to think of it that way, right? Like when you're doing a code review, you're like, okay, are these variable names making sense?
I see.
Is
Yeah.
is this is this going to cause bugs? Is this going to like cause things to break? You might not be thinking about like UI stuff, right? Like you're probably not really thinking about like, or you'll think about it, but you're not. It's not obvious to you from from looking at the code maybe that, oh, this button actually looks identical to this other button over here that does something different or something like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I think QA is important.
So at my work, we don't have a separate QA department. We do code reviews only for like important stuff, I would say. So yeah, a little that's a little bit foreign to me. I think we in the tech department do try to understand like the entire user experience. Is it working as intended, as described by the person who requested this feature? But um but we definitely don't like nitpick UI kind of stuff unless someone says, wait, that's confusing. Why would you do
Well,
that?
I guess what I'm describing could really be solved probably just by doing a demo.
There you go. We do
Probably.
a lot of demos for the user that
If
requested
you're
it.
doing a demo where like other people are asking questions, that should be usually. I mean, I know like in Don't Make Me Think, uh he talks about how like just how like the assumptions you make are so like just the person who makes something makes all these assumptions that they don't even realize are assumptions, right? Like when you look at your end user, they're going to do things that are like things you never would have even fathomed somebody would do when you actually look at what they do, right? um which I guess QA doesn't really catch all of that either, but I guess it is kind of weird, right? Because ideally we don't need code reviews or QA or anything, right? Ideally, like the developer will just write everything right.
Yeah, just do it right the first time.
And a lot of the time that's what happens. But like sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And it's kind of up to your team and like your what you're working on, what your project is as to like how acceptable that is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the consequences of getting it wrong are. Like if, you know, again, at my job, we roll out code a dozen, 2 dozen times a day, whatever, like whenever it's needed. There are other places where like if you don't if the developers don't catch something, QA doesn't catch something, next rollout isn't until like a month from now or whatever. And that's like a
Yeah.
much bigger deal, you know?
Yeah. Or like, you know, if you work at Cloudflare and your bug is going to bring down the whole internet.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
I want to go back real quick when you were talking about this this kind of adversarial relationship between QA and dev, though. You know, I think there's a connection there with the kind of like the hard ass that is maybe comes off as a jerk, but is like pushing you to do better, is challenging you. Like, I think that adversarial relationship, it's a tricky line to walk, but I do think that can also be like a productive thing. There's such a thing as like a productive tension or whatever you want to call it. Like
Yeah.
sometimes having having two people or two departments that kind of in some ways have like opposing goals or opposing metrics that again with the end goal of making like better software in the end, I think it can be sometimes productive to like have people that whose job it is to butt heads. And I think that takes a
Yeah.
really delicate balance between like you can't really have hot tempered people in those roles. I think that can lead to some bad situations. But like if I think if you have people who can do that job kind of dispassionately and just be like, no, my job is to say that it's not ready to go until it's ready to go, and like your job is
Yeah.
to go back and fix it. And like I think that can be really productive, and then we all go have a beer afterwards, no hard feelings.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the developer to have the ability to like not take it personally, right?
Yeah.
Like the development team should be able to, you know, take not even criticisms, just take like uh, someone else's objective look at what they created, you know. Um, and you're absolutely right. Like there are instances where like an adversarial relationship can be a good thing, you know. I mean, like I can think of like people say that like one of the reasons why Run the Jewels is such a good duo is that like they're in the studio trying to like kind of one up each other in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and so like you know one of them puts down like a crazy bar, so then the other guy's like, okay, I need to do better than that. I need to be up to snuff, and it just you know makes them both better.
Absolutely.
You could definitely approach it like that, you know, as like okay, QA's not going to catch anything on this, right? Like there's no way like this next one is like there's no one's gonna have anything to say. It's gonna be a perfect PR. That could be you know that's great.
Yeah. I think I don't know, but that really is a soft skill though. That's a hard place to get to. I don't think I think it's everything we just said. I think it's easier said than done.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. I've like sometimes I think like oh I need to work on my soft skills, but then I'm like how do I do that? Like what do you do? There's not like a tutorial. You know there are books and yeah there's stuff you can do, but it's trickier than just like you know learning technical stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the thing, but the hard thing with soft skills like that is that um, you often have to make those decisions like when you're talking to someone face to face, or not make those decisions, but like you have to use those skills in real time, like
Yeah.
while you're discussing it. Um, Whereas I think, with a lot of tech stuff and with writing code especially, we get to stop and think and like do it kind of methodically. And I think the thing about like learning soft skills is that you can learn how to do it. It's another thing altogether to do it in the moment when somebody
Yeah.
pisses you off and says something to you. I think the only way is just to practice, just get out there and like talk to more people.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to actually do it. That in the moment thing is what I always think about with foreign language. Like people sometimes talk about learning a foreign language as being similar to learning a programming language, but it's totally different when you can like stop and look something up, right? Like
Yeah.
when you when you're like fumbling over the words, you can't think of a word in like while you're trying to explain something to someone. That's different.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense.
Um, yeah, no, this episode was all over the place a little bit. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Do you have any other ideas related to this?
Not really. I kind of feel like, I've been thinking about some more things about like what makes team good, bad, all that. But I feel like it really does. Most of those just boil back in the end to like working as a cohesive team unit and not so much as an individual, and not um just just creating a sense that like we're doing something as a team. I think is the key to all of it. That's the way to making your day-to-day work life better. It's the way to like finding fulfillment and meaning in work and all that kind of stuff. I think all of it has to do with like working with other people towards a common goal. And contrary to what it says in the article, I think it's less about liking your coworkers necessarily as much as like, being respecting them and being challenged and inspired by them.
Yeah, I'm reminded of our episode 20, Agile Stockholm Syndrome. That's a little bit related to what we're talking about here. You should check that out, everybody.
Oldie from the vault.
Yeah, that's a throwback. I think that was a good episode. And I mean, it a lot of times, some of that stuff feels like a remedy. It tries to sell itself as a remedy for some of these things that aren't easy to fix, like, oh, just do agile development and then like your team will just work right and it'll all be right. But that's not what it is, right? It's usually not like, there's not like one process that'll just fix the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of what this article is really trying to say at the end of the day. Like, no matter what the problem is, it's a people problem. Like, yeah, that's what it always comes back to in the end. And there's no way to systematize that's going to work for every situation. It's always, how do people come together and solve problems?
That's a good one. That's going to be a YouTube short right there. Did you see our last 2 YouTube shorts have done pretty well?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like everyone should be using Git. Got 1,300 views. And what is it that we love about programming? Got 1,237.
What? Are we going viral?
What about viral? I don't know if there's like a threshold for viral. Doesn't feel viral. Also, I don't know how YouTube Shorts really works. Like, I think they're shown to people. I don't know. It's always weird. Like, how do you count a view when it's like something that was just shown to someone,
Yeah. I think it has something to do with whether they stick around for more than a fraction of a second, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, 1,200 and 1,300 is pretty good, though, I think, compared to...
There's engagement, too. I mean, they got like 20 likes. Got 18 likes. The other one got 22 likes.
Nice.
Hey, everybody, stop disliking our stuff. We got 2 dislikes on both of those. Why are you disliking our shorts? How do you dislike everyone should be using Git? What is there to dislike about this?
Come on, man. I really liked our last episode. The Thing I Love Has Changed episode. I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, I think that was a good one too. Maybe that's sort of like when you're reviewing your own code. Like, we think it's great, but
yeah.
But no, I thought that one was a standout episode for sure. All right. I think that's a wrap for today.
Catch you guys next time.
1X Developer Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Colin. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the 1X Developer Podcast, and let you know that if you have any questions, comments, or if you just want to tell us about your day, you can reach us at X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1X Developer Podcast. We're also on YouTube at 1X Developer Podcast. You can email us if you're weird at 1xdeveloperpodcast@protonmail.com. And lastly, don't forget to follow, subscribe, all that stuff, so you don't miss any further episodes of the 1X Developer Podcast. Thanks so much. See you next time.